They call it obsession, and I call it dedication. Early mornings, fewer explanations, a quieter focus. That's when effort became noticeable. And noticeable effort makes people uncomfortable. We like growth in theory. We applaud once it's finished. But watching it happen in real time creates tension. Comparison starts to raise questions. Questions like, what would happen if I tried harder? Or worse, why haven't I? From an early stage, we learn which behaviors are welcomed and which ones create friction. You show too much focus, you're told to relax. And direction matters more than distance because every small change in direction creates massive separation over time. But here's the part that changes everything. Identity doesn't live in our thoughts, it lives in our behavior. We don't believe our way into new actions. We act our way into new beliefs. Over time, something shifts again. Not because you try to prove anything, but because consistency compounds. This is where the word obsession needs correcting. They call it obsession, and I call it dedication. And I didn't always know the difference. I learned it the first time someone looked at me, not angry, not curious, but genuinely confused, and they said, "Why are you working so hard?" Not what was I working on, not why it mattered, just why so much. What struck me wasn't the question, it was the timing. No one asked that when I was struggling. No one asked when things weren't moving. The question only came once my behavior started to change. Early mornings, fewer explanations, a quieter focus. That's when effort became noticeable. And noticeable effort makes people uncomfortable. Not because it's wrong, but because it disrupts something we rarely want to talk about, the unspoken agreement to stay roughly where we are. We like growth in theory. We applaud once it's finished. But watching it happen in real time creates tension. Because it forces comparison, and comparison starts to raise questions. Questions like, what would happen if I tried harder? Or worse, why haven't I? So instead of asking those questions, we label obsessed, too intense, doing too much. It's easier that way. Now here's something I didn't understand for a long time. Identity isn't something we choose all at once, it's something we practice, often without realizing it. From an early stage, we learn which behaviors are welcomed and which ones create friction. You show too much focus, you're told to relax. You care deeply, you're told to lighten up. You push past the room, you're told to slow down. Not aggressively, subtly. And those signals matter because over time they teach us something powerful. Blend in and life gets easier. So we adapt. We learn when to dial ourselves down, when to stop before someone else asks us to, when to choose comfort over curiosity. And eventually that adaptation stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like personality. But here's the part that changes everything. Identity doesn't live in our thoughts, it lives in our behavior. We don't believe our way into new actions. We act our way into new beliefs. And confidence works that way. So does discipline. Your brain doesn't ask who you want to be. It asks what you keep doing. And it builds a story from there. This is why the early days of discipline feels awkward. You're behaving in ways that don't yet match your self-image. You wake up early, but don't feel like an early person. You stay consistent, but don't feel disciplined. So your mind pushes back. Not because something is wrong, but because something is unfamiliar. That discomfort isn't a warning sign, it's evidence of transition. There's a phase no one warns you about. It's not dramatic, it's not painful, it's just quiet. You start noticing that your attention has shifted. Your patience for distraction is lower. Your conversations are shorter, not colder, just more intentional. And slowly, you're no longer moving at the same pace as everyone around you. Nothing bad happened, no conflict, no falling out, just a change in direction. And direction matters more than distance because every small change in direction creates massive separation over time. This is where the doubt often sneaks in. Not loud doubt, practical doubt. The kind that asks, is it worth it? Am I missing something? Why does this feel lonely? But that loneliness isn't loss. It's space. Space that appears when old patterns fall away before a new alignment arrives. And here's the temptation: to shrink yourself slightly, just enough to restore that comfort, to soften the standard, to explain yourself, to skip once, not because you want to quit, but because you want things to feel familiar again. But if you stay, if you keep showing up without witnesses, without reassurance, without applause, something unexpected starts to happen. You stop needing external permission. You start trusting your internal signal, and solitude stops feeling like isolation and starts feeling like clarity. This is where the word obsession needs correcting, because obsession and dedication are not the same thing. Obsession is driven by anxiety, it's restless, it's afraid to stop. Dedication is driven by intention. It's calm. It knows why it's moving. One reacts, the other commits. Obsession burns energy. Dedication builds structure. Obsession needs constant reassurance. Dedication doesn't require an audience. And from the outside, they can look identical. Early mornings, repeated effort, unusual focus. But the internal experience couldn't be more different. One feels frantic, the other one feels grounded. What often gets mislabeled as obsession is actually decisiveness. And decisiveness stands out in a culture that keeps its options open. When someone commits fully to a direction, a standard, a life, it challenges the idea that hesitation is normal. So the label gets applied, not to describe what's happening, but to make sense of it. Over time, something shifts again. Not because you try to prove anything, but because consistency compounds. The explanations stop, the second guessing quiets, and the questions change. How do you stay focused? How do you keep going? But then the answer is simple. You're no longer trying to be disciplined. You are disciplined. It's no longer effort, it's familiar. And that familiarity creates peace. So here's what I want to leave with you. You don't owe anyone an explanation for caring deeply. You don't need permission to take your life seriously. And you don't need to defend consistency to people who've never practiced it. If someone calls that obsession, let them. Labels don't shape outcomes, behavior does. And the life you're building will eventually speak for itself. So keep going, quietly, intentionally, without apology. They can keep the word. You keep the life it builds.